Hello, ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls, and children of all ages. Welcome to the F4L Headquarters Podcast. Oh, guys, relax. Step up, baby. Thank you, everybody. Thank you. Ladies and gentlemen, my name is the F4L icon, Sean Jazz Stevens. And you are listening to the F4L Headquarters Podcast. And we have done numerous shows, and I gotta say, I love doing this. Today is Thursday. A lot of people have hyphenated this day or segregated this day to be called Throwback Thursday, a day where we reflect upon the past. And you know, what I originally planned on doing today is something that I have come to realization not long ago. In fact, earlier today, I've decided I'm sick and tired of falling into this trope of believing that the month of October is cursed. Yeah, it is true that a lot of bad things have happened to me in my lifetime in this month. Some very life-altering moments in my life, some very life-building things that I've had to endure and survive through. But you know what the key thing is there? Is that I survived it. I survived all of the Octobers up until this year. 5 years ago, coming up this Saturday, was one of the greatest moments of my life. It's the moment when my family, my wife, my kids, and I became one family. And I know this might be sappy, and I know this might not be something that everyone loves to hear. But you know what? Sometimes in life, you have to reflect upon what you have and not what you don't have anymore. Yeah, life wasn't easy going back in the time. I've encountered losing friends tragically on Halloween night. I've encountered losing loved ones, losing a son, losing a girlfriend, my first love. I survived leaving home for the first time ever at the age of 15. But you know, when I look back at all those things, yeah, those are hard moments, right? But I survived that stuff. And that stuff is in the past because of what happened to my friend on Halloween night, getting shot and whatnot. Because of that, when I was only 13 years old, that led me to wanting to become first aid and CPR certified, so that if I was ever in a situation where if I could help someone who is hurting and had some type of emergency, I could help them. I don't want to go into great detail because one, this goes all over the place, and I know also I want to spare everyone of the gritty details because you don't need to know the gritty ones. But I lost a son due to an attack on my girlfriend who I wasn't there to protect. For the longest time, even to this day, I still blame myself because I wasn't there. Granted, I wasn't there because at that time I was 15 years old and I had to abide by rules and guidelines and whatnot by other people. People who I knew were toxic. That being my blood family. Well, my half-blood family. Or just in general. And the result of that was me having to leave home, which I was grateful for. The bad part about that is that my girlfriend, who went to go get some help and go talk to her mom. Going to a bad area without me there, she was attacked. And at 8 months pregnant, we lost the baby in October of 1995. And anyone who's ever lost a baby or lost someone like that, I think maybe sometimes you can understand that. Maybe you can't. And you know what? I am happy that you haven't had to feel that. And it was only a couple weeks later that the woman that I thought I was going to spend my life with, that after she had encountered that, the pain was too much. As I blamed myself because I wasn't there, she blamed herself what happened to her, and that was a tragic thing. It wasn't her fault. And no matter how many people tell me over the years that it wasn't my fault either, it was on these guys who did this on their own maliciousness. You know what? It's easy to play this is horrible and this, there's nothing left to go on for. But you know what? That's not true. Because that was when I was 15 years old. In all fairness, the idea of what the F4L would become, the F4L lifestyle, the family that we would create, this wouldn't be something that would happen until 2 years later, or a year and a half later. Being able to leave my home and being out of that toxic environment was a good thing. After the tragedy, I was awarded emancipation from my toxic family to become my own guardian at 15, 16 years old. I was 16 technically when I got emancipated. And I was 17 when I began my journey and the quest to have my own place. Could you imagine? I know a lot of people, when they look at, the things that they have in their current states, not states in where you live, but states as far as where you are at in your life right now. Some people might not be happy with the quality of what they're happy with right now. But what I want to, suggest to people is, before you make that jump to say, well, I would be better off on my own, let me tell you some of the key things that I've had to endure to get to where I am. Now, what's good about this, before I go that far, is what I think is important to realize. Yes, I had to stop what I was doing, and why? Because this show is not going to be affected by the past either. Turning over a new leaf. So, before I continue, I apologize. I did not introduce my friends. So, guys, take us away to this segment. Session, I guess. I got to get the ants in there. And why do I do that? It breaks up the tension. Because briefly we're going to get a little deep, but not too deep, because I decided we're not going to go and focus on the negative and the sad stuff today. We're going to actually the opposite of that, because some big things are about to happen. But first and foremost, what I was in the middle of saying is, prior to, there I was, if you would, at 16, 17 years old, and now I'm emancipated. I am now seen as an adult. I make my own decisions. a lot of kids out there, a lot of people who think that, well, I would be better off on my own and I want to, have my own thing. A couple things that I think you need to understand. What I had to encounter, I don't necessarily think is the easiest way, because it's not. It wasn't. But I did it. And what's good about this whole thing, after you hear, kind of the cliff notes of what I encountered, because we're not going to focus on the negative stuff. The light at the end of the tunnel is the important piece. The fact that no matter how many obstacles that I had to endure, no matter how many things that were standing in front of me, I continued on my journey. I kept getting up every time life kept knocking me down. I kept getting up. I kept moving forward. I stayed on my path and I was true to my goals. I think goals are a very important thing for everybody. I think they're a very underrated and underestimated thing. And I don't agree that there's an age limit on when goals begin. Just like I don't believe that there is an age on when you can fall in love. I can remember growing up telling people who I loved, or telling people I loved my whoever, you don't know what love is. You're only such and such age. That's nonsense. Everyone knows what love is. Everyone should know what love is, and everyone has a right to feel loved and be loved in return. Everyone has that, or should have that. That being said, there I was at 16, 17, and now I'm emancipated. I'm on my own. I was working and going to school. I was still in high school. Why was I still in high school? A lot of people have this notion, I don't need school. Some of these big successful executives didn't go to high school. They dropped out and they did their own thing and blah, blah, blah. That's good. That's for them. Their situation, your situation might be completely different depending on what their background is, who's helping them out, and whatnot. People like me who had to build my life from that point. And a lot of the times I consider the moment when I left home officially at 15 years old, folks. 15 years old, I decided I wasn't living at home anymore. It wasn't safe. There was no respect. The F4L, what we would come to know of what the F4L is, did not exist in there. In all honesty, at 15, after losing my son, after losing my girlfriend, a week after that, all in October, mind you. Now, already prior to that, a couple of years before that, at 13, I lost a very close friend of mine. These are things that I've had to encounter to get to me to the point at 15 years old, when now I have to make a life for myself at 15. I don't know how many people and what age demographic people are listening to this show, but I want to ask a general question. How many 15-year-olds can actually cook a full meal for themselves? How many 15-year-olds know how to budget a checkbook? How many 15-year-olds have work ethic, how to fill out an application, how to go for an interview? How many 15-year-olds know how to be a parent, raise kids, be a role model, be an inspiration, be a leader? And I'm not saying not every 15-year-old doesn't have those qualities. But if you're someone who lives in a comfortable environment where you have mom and dad and a loving environment and all that stuff, you really can't compare to someone who doesn't have that. At 15 years old, I walked away from my blood family with initially no family. I lost my son, who wasn't even born yet. And then I lost my girlfriend just a week later. Yeah, it was like a week later. 15, 16 years old, the court said, you know what, you are old enough and you've shown responsibility enough that you can take care of yourself. that is something that I built for myself because I've always been responsible. I've always looked at things the right ways. I've always done the work to get me there. When everyone doubts you, that's when you become even more than you already are. Because the world's going to doubt everything that you want to say and do, and that's been the case for me too. In elementary school, a lot of people would view my elementary school as as turbulent, if you would. And I have to say that even me, looking back at my elementary school days, I cringe thinking of the things that I did back then in elementary school. But what I know is why I did those things. And ultimately it was working for a goal. My goal was to get every student, teacher, and everyone in that school to laugh. Yeah, it came at a cost, and I learned the lesson of laughing with you versus at you. And yeah, to this day, they still talk about me to that school. But is it for the good reasons? I mean, it's because of me that they have to clarify what you can and can't bring to school for show and tell. I don't know if that's something you should be proud of. Looking back, I'm not happy I did it. And it was all over, doing the things and whatever. But one thing that always stood out, and one thing that always never changed, is my work ethic, my drive, my dependability, my responsibility, and my work ethic. The goal was to get everyone to laugh at school, but also at school, I was somebody at school. Outside of school, the only other place I was a somebody was on a martial art mat, which is where I was most weekends and, whatnot. Holidays, I was at the dojos, practicing martial arts, various martial arts, and adding to my skills. I lived in a nasty area, folks. I lived in a city. My grandmother, I said before, knew that, one, I lived in a rough kind of an area, and two, she knew I had energy, and she thought that I might be good for, sticking up for myself, more so than everything else. My grandmother was from Ireland, and she was a fan of boxing and fighting and combat in general. She didn't get to see what MMA is. In all honesty, what I did wasn't technically MMA. Back in those days, we called it freestyle tournaments. Because it was, you would have, people who would have various different trainings who are cross-trained, as we used to call it, who would compete against tournaments like you guys know now. And there I was somebody. To the people in the stands, to my coach, to my teammates, to my sensei, to the other students, to their parents, to the people who watched, to the other schools, to the other person who stood across from the mat from me. I was respected, I was feared, and I was reliable. It came with a cost. My health, my physical aspects, those are two of the things that I had to sacrifice. There are many a times that I fought hurt, which I don't suggest you do. I've said that over and over again. I did do that. And granted, I'm still here, but guess what? Because of those things, because I might have forced myself to come back early, because I didn't even report an injury, because I knew I wouldn't be able to compete, because I didn't want to let my coaches, my dojo, my sensei, the other kids in my class down, I showed up injured. But here we are years later. I'm in my 40s, folks. I'm going to be 44 in March. If we're not counting any of the other sports that I've done, just the martial arts alone. And folks, I trained in traditional Muay Thai. We didn't have helmets and pads and whatever the kids are wearing now. You go out there and you fight. And I have one draw on my record. It came when I was 10 years old. A draw. And because I wasn't happy about getting a draw, I continued going until I was at least 18, but there was also an agreement my grandmother and I had made, and I committed to that until I got my black belt, my grandmastership, and I fulfilled that. And of course, that was also when I would transition to becoming and going into pro wrestling, which was my ultimate goal. People have asked me, what is it about the pro wrestling that you chose? Look at the life that I've had. When you have, in your world, when you have chaos that sits around you, you need to find something or someone to cheer for. You need to find strength from somewhere. To me, it was these pro wrestlers. It was these guys who are larger than life, who didn't matter how much you gave them, how much you fought them, how much the bad guys would try to win. Granted, I tend to like the bad guys because I would also see that there was more to them than what everyone else did. That's the empathy factor to me. That's what makes me different than a lot of other people. The ability to separate from what we call the kayfabe to reality. And what I remembered is these wrestlers are huge. I wanted to be huge. I was a skinny, scrawny kid from a city that no one's ever heard of. We had no money. And I was the only one in the house that really enjoyed wrestling. Okay? But I'm also the only one who got involved with sports, got involved with martial arts. Began writing. I loved writing. It was a passion, and it was something fun. It was an escape. So pro wrestling really was an outlet for me to get lost into a world that wasn't mine. It was a adventure that was not my horror story. It was someone else's. Robert Englund one time, of course, actor who famously played Freddy Krueger, once said to me that one of the things that he is asked to do is he's actually one of the people that burn clinics for kids and stuff like that. He's one of the most requested people to go to these burn clinics for kids who have suffered horrific injuries or whatever. And Robert Englund, and if those people who are familiar with the Nightmare on Elm Street franchise, the horror movie aspects, they know who Robert Englund is or Freddy Krueger is. He's kind of a pop culture icon. But what he said, which makes a lot of sense, is when people look at horror, when they have real life horrors that they're going through, these fictitious horror scenarios like Nightmare on Elm Street, the Jason Voorhees, all those things, they're more of a comedy show, a skit show. It's an escape from their own horror that they're real life, going through. Which is why they are able to separate from being terrified of this person to enduring him and loving him. And he is someone who does those things because he's a really good guy, foremost. The fact that he took time to tell me these things. And of course, he and Wes Craven were the ones who, talked to me after I lost my mother, and I was telling them how I got into horror movies and how my mother and I would watch together, when we could watch movies together when, I was younger. And, I told them how when she got older and she was, towards the end, she was getting sick and everything else, I would tell them how she got another fondness for horror movies, and she loved them even more so. And that's when Robert Englund told me the story I just told you guys. One of the things I'll always remember, and I'm sad because I no longer have these little trinket things, the physical forms, but I do have images of them. But after exchanging pleasantries with Wes Craven and Robert Englund, I had walked away, and I gave them a little autograph and whatever, and they Wes Craven gave me a little card, and I went and read it, and what Wes Craven wrote on my card was, when he gets to heaven, he's going to look up my mom and tell him what a great son she has. That was a great moment for me. It was a really touching moment because, one, someone who I respect in the film industry recognizes me as someone who, is a decent person. And, unfortunately, Wes Craven, hopefully he got to do that. I don't know if he did or not, but just the thought of it was really touching. And he's also the one who named our roster, for those people who don't know. He and Robert Englund together named our roster what we call our superstars. But anyway, I'm getting off topic. The reason I told you guys about, all of those things is because when you're in a situation that can be horrific, you have a couple of choices. One, you can feel sorry for yourself. Two, you can just endure it. Or three, you meet it head on and you pull your bootstraps up and you work even harder. That's kind of my mentality. I don't back down from a challenge. I hit challenges head on. I accept most challenges and whatnot. It gets me in trouble sometimes, and sometimes it's just one of those things. You can't challenge me to something or say do this and not expect me to try at least. So anywho, but at being 15, 16, 17, most kids are living with their moms and dads, or whatever the kid, or your guardians, if you would. You wouldn't dream of going from school, also doing your homework, playing sports for your school, and then going to work to put money away for your apartment. How many people do that? Probably not many. Before cell phones existed, cell phones weren't always a thing, and before social media was a thing. Well, I found myself, I think a couple of weeks ago I gave the kind of the history of how the F4L started. So if we're going to go into that, we're not, because we've already covered that. But the moral of that story is, you see, if I had just given up and accepted, nothing can get better than where it is when I was 15 years old. 2 years later, when the F4L would be formed and would be born, out of the ashes of all of that tragedy for all of us collectively who created the F4L, rose something more powerful, more positive, and more meaningful than anything that has happened prior, which is why really when it comes to, where I consider my life really beginning is really when the F4L began. Because now I had motive, I had a surrounding, I had a family, I had drive and whatnot. I already had the drive, but you know what I mean. So, most people who think that they can, do it all, they find out real quick how hard life is. And then also when who you bring into your world, right? Your friends, especially when you're 15 years old and you're in your teenage hoods. The kids you meet at school, who do you hang around with? Because that's really going to also affect how you're going to be and where you're going to go in those aspects. If you hang out with a bunch of troublemakers, you're probably going to get yourself in trouble. Regardless if you yourself are the one getting in trouble or not, that's probably the path you're going to fall into. But if you surround yourself with positive people who are, upstanding people or people who complement your traits, you guys, it's a collective thing, then you have more of a chance of success together than you do, with someone who is just going to draw you down like an anchor. So, and yes, even I have been victim to this. I have allowed people around my life, and I've surrounded myself with people who I considered to be friends until I was able to step back. And, and sometimes you need to listen to your other friends when they point these things out. That's what we call constructive criticism. It's not being hateful. It's not being spiteful. It's out of love. It's out of care. It's out of concern, empathy. And, what I mean by they're going to, bring these things to your attention is your friends are going to have your back. Your real friends, they have your back because you have theirs too, you see. And if people are talking about you behind your back, for example, your friends are going to stand up for you. And they're going to probably tell you, hey, Joe Schmo, who you think is your friend, just said this. Now, yeah, some people might say, well, in high school, that's drama, right? I do my best to try to avoid real-life drama as much as I can, because there's plenty of drama in, the other aspects of my, life as, pro wrestling and entertainment or whatever. I don't need real-life drama on top of that, which, no matter how hard you try, sometimes you do get dragged into those, and just your responsibility is to find your way out as quick as you find yourself in it. But when you surround yourself with people who are more positive and people who more fit your goals, your dreams, you do tend to do better, and you will succeed. You will succeed together in a lot of ways. In high school, I played 3 sports, as I mentioned before. I played soccer in the fall, wrestling in the winter, and I was in the swim team in the springtime. I was almost always in the gym working out. And I was also into martial arts when I wasn't there, training in the various different styles. It was a lot of time. I didn't have a lot of time to be at home anyway. And then when I was on my own, now I had to add in work on top of that. Did I get it done? Yes, I did. I want to give you guys a perspective. If you're someone who is a senior in high school, we'll say 17, 18 years old, you're about to graduate high school, look at where your life was if you think it's so tough. Because what I want to let you guys know is when I was graduating high school, I had already beaten cancer for the first time. I already got my black belt in martial arts. I've already started pro wrestling school. And I've already won a writing award. I was destined to graduate high school with honors. These are the things that were going to happen when I was going to graduate high school. And when I did all those things, I did them with no home, folks. I had nowhere. I lived in what we called homeless shelters at 17, and I still went to school. I still went to work. I still played the sports. So anyone who wants to find an excuse why you can't go to school, because either it's too hard or not helpful, if anything, it's a reward for yourself for sticking with it this long. You owe it to yourself that you've been committed to this long. And for you to quit, your senior, your junior, sophomore, whatever year, you just wasted all of your potential and all of the things that you have accomplished. At that point, you just threw away. Is school the right for everybody? You know what? Different schools are different. Schools are different everywhere, right? Everyone has a different experience in school. Did I love school? No, I didn't love school. I did school because I needed to do school, and I immersed myself around it. As I said in my, back to school survival tips, I tell people, get involved with sports, join a club early in the school year, and that will give you incentive to go to school, to do well in school, and give you positive relationships while you're in school. And also gives you incentive to do well in school, because if you're not doing well in school, you'll kicked off whatever it is, and that's reality of it. Those are the reasons why you get involved in those things, and the fact that most 17-year-olds can sometimes are just thinking, "Oh, I want to get my license. I want to drive," And that's a cool idea, and that's a cool notion. I was given that opportunity at 17. I could have got my license. But instead of going to get my driver's license at 17, I went out and got first aid and CPR certified by the American Red Cross instead. Now, why did I do that instead of getting a driver's license? Folks, this is before there was Zipcar, before there was, Toro, before you could go rent a car. And also, remember, even though I was considered to be an adult, I was still under 21. So I still wasn't able to do things that 21 plus people could do. And technically speaking, most places you have to be at least 21 to rent a car. I lived, my living establishment didn't require having a car. I lived in a city, I knew how to use buses and trains, and I can walk. So, as far as that goes, could I have gotten my license at 17? Sure I could. That's something everyone wants to. Oh, I want to drive a car and, feel important and whatever. You could still feel important by doing what you got to do. It just depends on what your lifestyle you're trying to live. You don't need a car to be successful as much as people think you do. You don't need a car to get from point A to point B if you're creative and wise enough. Depending on where you are, I should specify that. Some areas you do need to get there in some way. But that's something that's your responsibility. But at 17, you really wouldn't know what that is. Because the idea is to go driving. And, a lot of people look at... they look at driving as it's a fun thing and all these. It's a very serious responsibility. If you look at the amount of accidents and the things that have occurred, the reason why there are so many laws that are in place for young drivers is because of all of the mistakes and all of the fatalities and all the sorrow that has happened because of those things. The reason why rules are in place are because something negative came from it. And the reason why rules are in place are to prevent those things from happening and causing more harm or more sadness or more sorrow to somebody else. That is why rules exist. That was a conversation I had with my kids a long time ago. Which brings me to my next point, which is when we're going to get off of this, negative sadness, early days stuff. If I had given up at 15 when everything else was looking really rough, I lost my son, I lost my girlfriend, I was out of my house, instead of playing the victim and falling into all that, was I hurt by it? Yes. Was I sad? Absolutely. Did I cry? No. But what did I do? I continued working hard. I got emancipated and got away from my family. 2 years later, the F4L would be formed. I would start my own family as far as the F4L goes, my brothers and my sisters and whatnot. I would fulfill getting a black belt. I would fulfill graduating high school with honors. I would become a professional wrestler and start my wrestling career. And then meet a woman years not long after that who eventually would become my wife. Yes, 2 kids later. Sometimes in life you have to go around the world to find the one you were supposed to be with was in front of you the whole time. And that's the story of my romantic life. But those things that I've had to encounter are life lessons that I needed to help me get to where I am now. And when I started this podcast back in 2020, everyone in the world was worried about all the negative things in life. Oh, what are we going to do? We have to sit in our house with our families. Oh, what the horrific. We have to, now we have to be around our wife and our kids all the time and work from home and My favorite activities are board games with my kids. My favorite moments happen when I'm with my kids. In all honesty, I have said it time and time again, I am grateful that I was able to take time. In 2020, I was seeing and getting to meet some of these amazing people who were like myself, people who were visionary, people who worked on goals in various different ways. And that is how, ultimately, what my son and I started on Jazz and Sons Dream Matches became what Icons of the F4L is today. It's a show that highlights real-life people who have accomplished real-life things. It is a way to highlight those names and introduce them to the world in saying that this person is someone to pay attention to. A few years ago, hold on. I'm going to go into the next subject because we're going to another section. So, ants separate us. You know, the ants act as a separation. Our ant band, they like to separate our, different parts of our show. And I'm thankful that I have an ant band. I mean, how many people have a band that can play musical instruments? I mean, I think that's pretty epic myself, but that's just me. Anywho, what I was about to talk about is a couple things is creativity and finding, what it is that you're passionate about. And what is it about the goal or the passion that makes you want to do whatever it is? Yes, this is a goal thing, so let's do this too. Usually only get one of those in the show. We're going to get two today. So, whenever you're going to look at a goal for yourself, what is the goal you're wanting to achieve? Why are you going after the goal? In 2020, I found myself seeing people like myself who were, busting tail trying to achieve their goals and dreams and whatever. And some of them I became very good friends with. Some of them I'm very good friends with to this day. Some of them I'm not. And that's okay. At a young age, I realized that I loved writing. I loved being creative. It was an escape, as I said. But again, we're not going back to the past. We're talking about the not so far from here. I'm not going to bore with you guys with telling you the story for the 9 billionth time how Jazz and Sons Dream Matches started, because by now you know. But here's what you don't know. What you don't know is the early people the people who we first started looking at to become these icons. And I know that in this, recently even, we've been doing a lot of shout-outs. I didn't advertise this show today. Well, I did. But I don't think that people are exactly expecting to get this kind of a shout-out or this kind of acknowledgement or whatever, because some of these are good things, some of them not so good things. See, when my son and I started Jazz and Sons Dream Matches, it was something that a father and son, my son and I, could do together. I was utilizing my knowledge and skill as far as my wrestling knowledge, my wrestling ability, how to format a TV show, how to format a wrestling card. Also the maneuvers and calling the various different technical things. My son brought what we call color commentary. He brought the real life commentary to the shows. So our earliest shows became popular because people would tune in to hear, me talking about, say the Great Muta, and then my son saying, this guy's not that great. And then me trying to educate my son on why the Great Muta is one of the greatest wrestlers of all time. And then, of course, it didn't help that we put him in a match and my son beat him. So, but regardless, the idea was people tuned in a lot because of those antics and those real life moments. At the early days when I was looking at icons of the F4L, of course my son still has a lot of saying what's going on. He's still part of what the Jazz and Sons Dream Matches do. But in 2020, my son was actually trying to work with, was trying to get some stuff going with his other friends. And he was taking a little bit less of a step on our show and working with them. And I was okay with that because, you know what, as your kids get older, they're going to branch out. He's still, at that point, he was still going to work with us here and there and oversee a lot of things, help out with finalization things and whatnot. But in the same sense, as a parent, sometimes you got to let your kids enjoy their time with their friends too. It's an important thing, and let them learn on their own. So I did, and he, tried that, and he ended up coming back and work with us more. So there's that life lesson there. But when we're looking at people, we saw Jack and Tim, for example, the Lucky Ones. They were a father-son singing group from Britain's Got Talent. My son's actually the one who said, "Oh, look at this." At that point, Jazz and Son's dream matches had already been established or whatever. And my son, being a father-son duo, he's like, "Oh, look, this is a father-son group team who sings music together. And they play music, and look at this." And they won the Golden Buzzer Award. I'm like, "Oh, that's an awesome thing." And, and that's how we started initially starting to build these real-life people based upon these, these individuals. Me being the movie guy that I am, and seeing and knowing talent, I saw people like Jackson Robert Scott, the actor from Georgie from It or The Prodigy. And I said, you know what, that kid's got a natural comedic timing to himself. He holds himself as more of a funny kind of a person. And after actually meeting Jackson and getting to know Jackson, he is naturally a funny person. I think he would be a natural comedian. So we added Jackson to our roster. Of course, because of the whole, his, ties to horror movies per se, we added him to the BA division. And that's kind of how he became, that element. As far as, the early people of like the, Robert Englund's, Kane Hodder's, and all those people, the ones who we consider to be Hall of Famers today, the early people who started icons of the F4L, really they laid the format because these are people we respect, and these are icons. The current roster we have today are icons in their own right. If that makes any, I mean, they are. They're forming their own path, and they are our icons where they are now. And as time went on, more and more people would be added. Jojo the bodybuilder, I've talked about him multiple times. He's been on the podcast when I started the podcast. Jojo the bodybuilder, one of the hardest working young men out there. The only legitimate person who can call himself a bodybuilder because he's actually competed on a bodybuilding stage. There are many young people who claim to be or call themselves bodybuilders or whatever the case may be. But Jojo the bodybuilder has actually competed in bodybuilding competitions. Until you've actually done that, you're just someone who likes to work out in the gym and take pictures of yourself, and that's cool. Good for you having good self-esteem. Until you're actually on a stage presenting yourself to be a bodybuilder, you're not a bodybuilder. You're taking pictures and you're proud of yourself, and that's okay too. But Jojo the bodybuilder is a legitimate bodybuilder. He's also one of the hardest working young men we've had on our roster. He has been on our roster since he was since we started this new movement. And one of the things that I gotta say is I'm still friends with JoJo to this day. I still follow JoJo. JoJo still watches the show. And I know his dad, his brother, the family's amazing. They're amazing families. But this is what Icons does. It highlights these real life dream masters. JoJo's a dream master. Not only does he work towards his goals, he knows the grit that goes along with it, he works towards them, but also he achieves them. He doesn't do things the easy way, he does it the right way. And that's why JoJo the bodybuilder has been on our show since one of the early stages when we started this round of things. Henry and Jairo Mena, the Mena boys. Two of the toughest young men out of Texas. Two of the most polite young men you'll ever talk to. Get them on a mat, they're two of the toughest young men you'll also have to compete against. Henry and Jairo Mena. JoJo the bodybuilder. The Adele boys. Jaden Brooks. These are names you've heard on our show, and some of them you've even seen on our show. And you've seen them here. And one of the things that some of the things that make those people stand out is because they are legitimate dream masters. And, I am proud of every single one of these people who I have watched grow into the icons that they are. I don't mean just on our shows, but in real life. They are busting their tail and still making their goals, making their dreams happen. And they still follow up and check in here and there, and I'm still very much connected to a lot of them. There have been people, however, that haven't had that kind of, connection with me, or haven't had that kind of, haven't really saw the whole importance of it. And listen, here's what I say to that. I offer someone, I invite people, I say, you know what, I think you'd be great for our show. What does it mean when I reach out to someone and say, listen, my son and I do a YouTube wrestling show where we put people against other people in wrestling matches. We build you as a computer video game character, and then you're going to be competing against people. We don't control the matches, but it gives you press, and people get to hear your name, and blah, blah, blah. These are the technical things that I say to people. But I only really reach out to people who I believe are icons in general. And icons of the F4L. They represent the F4L brand and the F4L as a whole. The icons of the whole. They are the icons, and they are just part of the F4L, if that makes any sense. I watched these people grow over these years. And it's been an honor and a privilege to watch that. In 2001, right, I had a co-host on the show. He was great too. Jojo, the model Sebastian, was my co-host. Tremendous young man. Again, he and his family I love tremendously. They are extended family. They are F4L. And the idea of bringing Jojo Sebastian in was to kind of rekindle what my son and I did years ago. And I wasn't going to make, the idea was to bring that element of commentary back that people enjoyed. Timing kind of got into play, and then, different other things came into play. Then 2001, I started seeing a lot of negativity about the icons, of people who were being disrespectful to me or the other people who were on the show. And let me tell you this. You can talk about me all you want, but when you start making fun of the other people, or you start mocking what we're doing and why we're doing it, you're done. I'll delete your character. You don't exist, and that's fine and dandy with me. Doesn't matter. I don't mention you ever again. Plain and simple. And I've done that, and I still do it. And people know who I have done that for. I have no hard feelings. It is what it is. It's not meant to work out. It's not meant to work out. But for the people who are on our show, if you were to Google some of their names on YouTube or anything else, I wouldn't be surprised if our videos of those people are the first things to pop up. And I take great pride in the fact that I am bringing them and making them household names, because they deserve it. All of these people. But in 2001, the negativity was getting to me. People were being rude, talking about the other people, and then attacking my family and whatnot. And I took a break from social media for a little while, and evaluated it. And I was actually going to pull the plug on Jazz and Sons rematches. The way I figured it is, one, my son had less and less to do with the show at that point. And ultimately it was a father-son bonding thing in general. And it was always fun to do with my son. But as we were getting older, he had, different commitments, whatever. Now, everything's back to where it was before now. But, because of that element, and where it's just me running everything, and Jojo Sebastian would have been great continuing. He would have continued doing commentary, I'm sure. It was the timing thing really got us, and technical stuff, and my own personal life was, being annoyed as well. My wife and I were supposed to move into a house that we had purchased and never got to move into because, get this, these TV shows like Ghost Hunters and Ghost Adventures or whatever else had convinced. Well, first of all, they convinced the original owners believed the place was haunted because, these people told them that, which is why we got a good deal on the house. But the idea is, here's the thing, because the house was so old, there was some work that had to be done on the house in order for us to live in the house. The agreement was that these things had to be done before we could move in. And we had to wait almost a year and a half in a hotel while these things were supposed to happen, and we found out in December of that year. Now, that was in the summer of 2001 that this had happened. And we were supposed to move. But yet, we were in a hotel waiting for this house to be done. And we come to find out in December of that year that the crew that they brought in believed the place was haunted because these people told them that. So they weren't even going in to work on the house that we had purchased because of that nonsense. Then what happened is, by the time they had gotten a real team in there who actually wanted to work, while you are in negotiations, you only have so long before they say, no, this has been too long, you have to pull out of this deal, and that's what happened. And now my wife and I are, we're very happy where we are now. We're not in a hotel anymore, thankfully. That was an interesting thing, but I'm giving you the real life things of what I have to endure that I don't share with the world because I'm not going to bore people with what I have had to do because of the better of the good. But yet in 2001, when this is negative, I was like, you know what? Maybe it's time to take a break from this and not do this anymore. I don't know if people care enough about our show. Now, I don't know how many people on here, on YouTube, listen or watch or pay attention to their algorithms. It is ridiculous how many people watch our videos, love our stuff, watch them tremendously, but yet we only have a few people who, as it says, is following us. Like, I see people who have all these ridiculous numbers of people who follow us. Here's the fun thing, and this is actually why I was starting to get kind of upset. The fact that I know I have a roster of 100 people on my roster, and about 60 of those people are real life people. And if you only have, say, 50 people who follow, but yet I've always had people who have followed prior because of my early days in YouTube. But if only 50 people are following out of a 60-person roster or a 100-person roster, clearly people who you're building, who you're championing, who you're commenting about, who you're basically introducing to the world are not watching their own stuff. So I was like, you know what? I talked to my son. I said, maybe it's time for us to pull the plug on this. And I contemplated it. And I announced maybe it's time we're going to end this. It's been a long time, and I think maybe we've done all we can do. But then, when we announced that, or I announced that, I got flooded with emails from fans, our fans, the number of people who watch our shows on a regular basis from all over the place. And some of them were touching, and some of them were just full of, we can't not have this show anymore. We love this show. commenting about what our superstars do for them or their loved ones. One of those emails particularly that touched me the most was there was a kid in Canada who was battling cancer. His mom had said that he and their family watches our shows, and how certain stars like JoJo the bodybuilder and Jaden Brooks and the Menu Boys and people like that encourage her son to keep fighting, because on our show they see how strong they are, how it doesn't matter how big their opponents are and whatever. And he watches our shows. He's a fan of wrestling. He's a fan of video games. He likes our stuff, and he cheers on the people like JoJo the bodybuilder and Jaden Brooks and all of these other people. And to hear that impact that our stars are heroes to people. There are many of the emails I get for people telling me specifically which people mean certain thing to somebody. The Duchess Lana King, who currently is the only person in the history of our show to be undefeated, and she is still undefeated. But I get countless girls who write in who say how awesome she is and how they can't believe such a woman can keep coming at, and it's amazing. And that they bring inspiration to all of these people. And collectively, a lot of emails I get for a lot of these different various people, and some people don't believe these are real people. I think that some people who people don't believe are real are like the Adele Boys, the Super Duck Grayson Russell. They thought that I made him up. Who else? Minty, I think they thought I made up. And no, I didn't make any of these people up. They are real life people. And I'm just happy and proud that these people in real life are doing what they should be doing. They are building their legacy. They are icons. And when I look back at this year, 2023, we've had such a year. Oh my goodness, what a year. It has been a roller coaster for me personally. I started the year very much like I start every year. We had some new talent. There were some people who were coming back, like Noah the Nightmare Tyndall, was going to be returning to action. And in real life, and on our show, Noah the Nightmare Tyndall has absolutely been a beast. In a good way. And we've had new people add just this year. Just this year alone, new people, not including the ones who were returning. We've had Speedy Easton McDonald. We've had Lincoln Brooks, Jaden's younger brother. We've had Pod Meets World, Brotherly Love Podcast, Your New Zealand Family, on both sides of those. All of the Your New Zealand Family have been built and added. Malibu Hardy has been in the roster. Big E, Elijah Furton, has joined this year. Walker Campbell, Walker Campbell joined last year, but he's been back this year. Elliot Fulham. David Howard Thornton, a.k.a. Art the Clown. And of course, our two newer people who just started, Action Jackson Baker, and now Ryder Lockwood is on our roster now. But to see the diversity of our roster has evolved over this year. These are people who in real life have accomplished just as much as they've done on our show. It really mirrors their accomplishments in real life. The Adele Boys. I'm talking about Anthony and Mason and Ty and Troy even. Troy was new this year too, and Troy has been, Troy just, challenged for the Dream Masters Universal Championship. To do that, he had to beat several people. And in this past yesterday, we had a bonus match, and Action Jackson Baker, on his very first day in the show, had 2 matches. The first one he nailed and did that well. He got added to a cage to become the number 1 contender after beating 5 more people, one of which was Ryder Lockwood. The other ones were people who have, like I mentioned, Henry El Nero Mena, Grayson the Super Duck Russell, Leo the Bull Curtis. These are real-life Dream Masters in real life from all over the world. By the way, a quick happy birthday to the Super Duck Grayson Russell, who just celebrated a birthday, by the way. Well, actually, hold on, let me do this. Oh, that is the lamest happy birthday. Yep. Grayson the Super Duck Russell's birthday was this past week. I want to wish him a happy birthday. Yes, folks, I'm eating carrots. Sorry. I thought it'd be done before the happy birthday was done. I was wrong. My bad. This is not an AMSI or whatever the heck they call that thing, this show. So anyway. But the moral of the story is this year has been a very emotional roller coaster. I dabbled on to try out TikTok for the first time. I've come to find out I am not meant to go on TikTok. I don't understand TikTok. I know a lot of people who enjoy it. But do you want to know what my favorite thing about the TikTok thing was? The only good thing I can actually say? I saw that there was a kid who was getting bullied on TikTok, and I reached out to his family, whatever, and I sent them an autograph photo, and I, gave him Speedy. I gave him an autograph photo, and I sent him a little letter of encouragement, letting him know he's not alone, he's got friends, and whatnot. That message and that autograph and whatever meant so much to that kid, and seeing him light up and being happy because I could take a few minutes out of my time to sign an autograph with someone who is going through something. No one should be bullied anyway, but I don't let anyone do that anywhere. So I saw that, so I sent him an autographed picture. I sent him a very nice letter as well. So very honored to be able to have done that. That's the only good thing about TikTok that I really can say that was good. I've met some people there. They were on our show. They're not there now. And I have no bad feelings for them. But this year has been a year of, I started out in 2023 with a clear set, a goal. And then I was asked to help out with someone else's goal. And then they decided they didn't want me to be part of that goal. But yet they wanted other people who I know and whatever to help out with the goal. And hey, listen, here's the deal. I'm not a phony. I'm a real life individual. I say it how it is. I'm always 100%. These people, went to great lengths, some of them, to disparage my name, insulting me, and accused me. And I had helped quite a bit with this project, gave them some tools and some knowledge and whatnot. And you know what? When I was asked to leave the project, I was the happiest because then I could focus on my actual things. I lost time this year because I had helped out with the project that I wasn't part of. I even tried to support it as much as I can. I tried to give them words of encouragement. And my friends who were going to help out kept on telling me something's off about this. And, c'est la vie. I wish them the best as well. Everyone associated with that project. I hope it goes well. But, I took time out of about 4 months, 3 or 4 months dedicated to a project I wasn't going to be part of. It cut into both the debut of Icons of the F4L. It cut into celebrating 3 years of doing the F4L Headquarters Podcast. So my commitment levels, have, as far as, working with other people has diminished me wanting to do that because I'm not going to get burned by people continuously. So now when I do the I do this show or Icons of the F4L, I'm very clear. I ask them once if they don't want to be in it. Cool, no worries. And I've removed these people from all aspects of our show, and it's no big deal. C'est la vie. Hope I wish them nothing but the best. Disappointed. This year I even joined a subscription to help someone to, thought we were friends, and then they were telling me that we're not friends. Or they don't know me enough to be a friend. Hey, you know what? C'est la vie. That's his decision, and I get it. So, I don't bother with it. No big deal. So, the lessons to learn is when people come and they get upset with you, or they don't like something, or, whatever else. I try talking to them first. If they don't want to listen to reason, or they want to be rude, or start threatening, or whatever else, then that's when I say that's it. Last year, in fact, this past year, I had people I used to talk very highly of. I don't talk about them anymore, and I'm not going to bring them up now. But what I am going to say is I did what I could for them when I could. And then they had the audacity to claim that I didn't do anything for them. Or they didn't ask me to do any of this stuff for them, and I didn't need to. I don't know. I don't need to do any of this, but I do it because I want to, because it helps others. It helps them. But, c'est la vie. I'm okay. If you haven't noticed, October normally is my month where I dread the month, like it's a plague. It's coming, right? Even this year, I knew October's coming, and I was getting that feeling of anxiousness. That pit in my stomach, something's bad is going to happen every single day in October. Except for my wedding anniversary. But then, today, I said, you know what? I'm sick of this. I'm sick of putting the past's negativity onto a month. Fun fact, I used to love Halloween. I used to love the art of dressing up for Halloween. This is something I've lost the passion for in my time. October is an anniversary. Halloween is an anniversary for me. So when I mention things happened in October, I know the dates. And I know them very well. And on those days, I might feel a little bit more withdrawn. I might feel that sadness on those days. But guess what? There are still 20-something other days of the month of October that I am not going to let a month keep me from living a life anymore. I'm no longer going to give power to a month over me accomplishing something or feeling pride in what I've done over the year. In fact, I'm going to use it to do more. I think what October is going to be is my month. October is going to be the starting point for what is next for everything across the board. for icons of the F4L, I'm going to start figuring out who is going to return in 2024. We're going to ask who is going to be returning in 2024. And then, this show, the F4L Headquarters Podcast, we're going to stop bringing these people in, and we're going to have a great time doing it. And one of the things we're going to do at the end of this year is we're going to have a watch-along on this podcast and watching the best matches of 2023. Now, the issue I'm going to have, which I'm going to start this month, is trying to figure out what the best ones were. There were so many classics that have happened this year. The Adeles and the Menu Boys, those Iron Man matches. How do I pick which one? The one that went into triple sudden death? There were so many epic encounters and epic matches and everything else. I don't know how I'm going to do it. In fact, I'm going to have to bring my son in to probably help me with some of that. And maybe you have to ask you guys, the fans, how to vote, perhaps, on some of those to help us figure that out. You know, every year we announce our Hall of Famers for 2024, for example, this year. We are going to announce it on that special show where all of our watch-along people are going to be there. We're going to announce who's going in the Hall of Fame this year. Spoiler alert, we do know who's going in already because we work hard, my son and I, and we've already kind of narrowed that down. But the thing about it is we really enjoy having people come to the watch-along. We've done it last year. But we have not had the video portion before, so this is going to be something different. We're looking forward to that. So to the icons of the F4L who listen to this show right now, if you know you're an icon of the F4L, meaning you are on our show, if you are interested in taking part in the watch-along, we welcome you guys to do so. Please reach out to me, you guys know how, by direct message on the Instagram at the F4L icon SEANJAZZSTEVENS1. That's F4L icon SEANJAZZSTEVENS1 on the Instagram. Or you can email at www.dreammatches, DREAMMATCHES @gmail.com. So that is two ways to get a hold of me. So between those two places, reach out, let me know that you would be interested in taking part in the watch along, especially if you're someone who's been on our show this year. I can tell you it's going to be tough trying to narrow down just a few matches. It's not going to be a long thing. Probably going to pick maybe 8 matches, and then also maybe some of the classics for the ones who are Hall of Famers, perhaps. As we did last year, there'll be a match for each of the Hall of Famers to be recognized, and mixed in with the current stars as well. So that should be a lot of fun. And whatnot. I do know that I have reached out to some people. I do know some people who are already interested. I'm just going to fine-tune and get them to commit, and we'll figure that out. And again, that'll be probably in December, will be probably during Christmas holiday break for those people who are wondering. It'll probably be one of those last days of October, because that's the end of 2023, folks. 2024 starts a whole new thing. There's going to be, and again, starting in January, we're going to be starting with a brand new roster. Some people will probably return, some of them may not. We'll have to find out. Yeah, it's going to be a lot of fun to figure all those things out. I think what's going to happen is over the next couple of weeks, I'm going to start announcing some of those people. I'm going to start reaching out to people. And anyone listening, again, if you're an icon of the F4L, you like being on our show, you should probably email me or message me and let me know you want to be on the show still. If you're someone who wants to be an icon of the F4L and wants to join our show, I urge you to reach out to me and do the same. We have people who are entertainers in the music, movie, film, theater, kind of world. And we have the Dream Masters MMA division, BA division. So, if you're someone who is a hardcore sports athlete, or someone who participates in multiple martial arts and so forth, then, we have room. For those people who know, we have, for the last 2 years, we've done our Open MMA tournament. That'll happen in June, and it'll happen again this June. So if you're someone who's a martial artist, a mixed martial artist, and you're someone who thinks that you want to be called and get recognized as an icon of MMA, you probably should message me, let me know that you want me to add you to our roster for next year so you could participate in that tournament. So, and the winner, of course, is going to be recognized and will be crowned the icon of MMA because you earned it. We don't have no control over who wins and loses. I draw all the names out of the Jar of Fate and who faces who and what rounds, and it's an intense tournament. It's great stuff. Some of the greatest matches. And again, I wouldn't be surprised if some of the matches that we have going into this year is, when we watch our best of this year, I wouldn't be surprised if some of those matches aren't on there. Because there was some classics during that MMA tournament. Same thing with the tag team tournament. Another classics. A bunch of great stuff there too. So, that's that. But I did want to recognize that, and I do think that's something that's going to be going forward. And also, I'm very happy to say we're just trying to fine-tune when this is going to start. Fans have been asking me for a long time. And up to now, because it's only been me, I have not done it yet. However, I think I'm going to attempt it. So, I'm going to announce that starting Monday, this coming Monday, we will be on whenever anyone else has a wrestling show on television. Because the original plan is we were going to be the alternative to the alternative of wrestling. This coming Monday, we're going to start that. We are probably going to put our show on a little earlier. We're not going to go all day like some other people. But we are effectively going to be doing this kind of a thing, which means we're going to be shaking up a few things in the divisions and so forth. We have the Dream Masters, who are the males, and the Dream Warriors, who are the females, which means we will have both men and women's shows on every single week starting Monday. Fans have said we want more of these icons. We want some more of these matches. Normally, for those people who don't know, we have had shows on the 4th, 14th, 24th, and then this year we added the Dream Warrior side of things. We added the 8th and the 16th of the month as well. I have to admit that we have not done a great job with, fulfilling all of those, except for the 24th, when the 24th show is a mix of everyone on one show. So, kind of how we're, each division has 2 shows, and then there's the main show at the end of the month to blow everything off and, to get everything, cross all those T's and end all of those feuds and start everything, end everything that has begun in the beginning of the month. So that's ultimately what that's for. So, it's going to be a busy couple days. It's going to be a busy Monday. Monday, I'm going to give you the new schedule will be Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, and Friday. Yeah, Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, and Friday. Starting this coming Monday, we're going to fulfill and become the alternative to the alternative of wrestling. So when they're on television, we'll be on YouTube. So that's how that's going to go. So I look forward to that. I look forward to the epic matches that are going to happen there. I'm going to be starting right after this show. I'm going to start reaching out to people and also evaluating who should stay, who should go in 2024. Of course, most people are going to end this year anyway. We're going to be this year. If you're a Hall of Famer, you no longer have to wrestle at all. I can't tell you who's going in the Hall of Fame this year yet, so you have to wait for that till that show, where we're going to do a watch-along. One watch-along, we're going to have hopefully a bunch of our icons of the F4L to join me here on the podcast and watch along some of our greatest matches of 2023, and I think that'll be a lot of fun. Usually is. So, that's something to look forward to. Ants, take us to our next segment. Hey folks, it's the F4L Icon here again, and I wanted to give some updates. I want to let you guys know that we are currently awaiting some scheduling timing for 3 different guests. Some of them I've already announced, but I'm going to announce them again. We're currently trying to find dates for both the Noah, the number one Noah, the Nightmare Tyndall, not just because of our icons of the F4L, but also in general. We're going to have Noah come back here officially on the podcast. We look forward to having him on, the toughest lad out of Liverpool, joining us then. Hopefully, we're working on getting him in here. Also, Isaiah, the Natural Trinia, we're going to try to get him on here. A tremendous young man. I just saw today he's working on kickboxing too now, adding that. He's a workhorse, this young man. We can't wait to have him on here. And, of course, someone who I'm really excited to bring on here, and I'm going to be honored to have an old friend and someone who I've respected for quite a while, and someone who I worked with way back in the day from the wrestling world. We're gonna have one of the most brilliant minds of all in New England, Sheldon Goldberg, will be joining us here on the F4L Headquarters Podcast. Not that Goldberg, but Sheldon Goldberg. If you know, whether you know him or not, you're going to come the end of when he's on here. We're just waiting on finalizing a date and a time for all of those young men and Sheldon to be joining us. And it's going to be a great time. I just want to give you guys that update to let you guys know we're always working. We're always continuing to bring you guys the best of the best, and we will always do so. So, there's that. And also, I should remind you guys, as far as icons of the F4L goes, November we have our next tournament. Yes. Technically speaking, it's our last tournament of the year, and that's our Team Warfare tournament. Team Warfare tournaments are teams of 4 taking on other teams of 4 until there is only a few left. I will get into that a little bit more on a future show, but I want to let people know that that is our next scheduled tournament in November. Coming up this week on the F4L Headquarters Podcast right here, we're going to have a Monster Mania. We just had the Monster Mania tribute show on our YouTube show if you guys watched, but we're going to have a Monster Mania breakdown as we have Monster Mania that is coming up in Hunt Valley, Maryland next weekend, coming fast. And yes, yours truly will be there. So if you are in Hunt Valley, Maryland, yours truly, the icon, Sean Jazz Stevens, will be there, along with my other Monster Maniac friends. So we'll get into that more at the beginning of next week. So I'm sure you'll hear from me before that. So as of right now, I want to say, everyone, thank you for joining me. It has been a pleasure to kind of just have a chat. Let you know that it doesn't matter what happened in the past. That's in the past. After all of these years, thanks to my wife, my kids, all of you, my F4L around the world, I am tired of being held captive by a month, and I have never backed down from a challenge, so I'm never going to give that power to a month ever again. So going forward, I'm going to own October like I've owned every other day. It's going to be another month where I'm going to achieve just like every other time. Facts on that. When the going gets rough, the rough get going, and there's no one as rough or tough as yours truly. Because sometimes there's a lot more to being an icon than others make it out to be. Folks, may all your dreams come true. Thank you for joining me. Peace, everybody.